Welcome to the Bruins Benders Podcast, Season 4, Episode 24 with Maddie and Smitty, brought to you on the Inside the Rink Podcast Network at InsideTheRink.com. In this episode, we will discuss a franchise-altering deadline from the Boston Bruins. Brad Marchand traded to the rival Florida Panthers. And was the deadline a success? All that and more. Hit subscribe on Inside the Rink's YouTube channel and follow us on the social media at Bruins Benders, and use this QR code on your screen to purchase event tickets through Ticketmaster. Get the rest of the Bruins games for this season, and maybe even a chance at a playoff. We'll talk about that too. Follow us each on X at Benders Smitty and at Mr. Matty Barry. And here we are. The Bruins did just what we wanted them to do and never thought they would.
No, I was shocked. I really was. I didn't think it would happen. I've been telling you all along that I wanted to see them do it before I would believe that it would happen. And here we are. They did it. Traded all the guys that we really wanted them to trade off the team, and got some, decent returns. Stocked the prospect pool a little bit. Got some draft picks. We'll see what happens with those. That might not be one of Sweeney's strong suits. And from the message that Charlie Jacobs gave, it sounds like our buddy Sweens and Mr. Neely will be around for a while. So he will be making those draft picks. So it'll be interesting to see if he packages those and maybe tries to get a player, which he's better at that, or if he actually uses the draft picks. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, a big, big day. With a lot of trades from your Boston Bruins.
I was listening to sports radio this morning, and someone made a good point. There were three guys really behind the Bruce Cassidy firing, and that was Trent, Frederic, Brandon, Carlo, Jake DeBrusk, and they were all gone. So I wonder if that had something to do with changing the culture, as they've talked about culture changing, franchise altering, and that type of thing. So maybe that played into some of it too. And of course, Brad Marchand gone, the captain. So, and then there's new reports today about exactly what the offers were. And I'm more leaning toward blaming Brad Marchand, to be honest with you. And we could talk about that in a bit. But if Brad Marchand wanted to be here, he'd be here. It seems.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it. By all reports, from Elliot Friedman, and we trust his sources impeccably. I think he's a very good reporter and usually gets things correct. So he's saying that the Bruins did not go below his AAV on his current deal. So that means the Bruins were talking about 3 years, because they did agree on a third year at 6.25 or 125 or whatever he was making right now. And above. So Marchand probably, like we said all along, saw the Elias Lindholm contract and was like, I'm not playing for less than that guy. I took a discount before. No one else is taking discounts anymore. I'm not doing it. And I can't blame, you can't blame the guy for that, because it's the Bruins' own fault for signing Elias Lindholm to that deal. I think if Lindholm's deal was 3 years at 5 or 8 years at $5 a year, I think Brad Marchand is here for 6 and change. I think he is, honestly. I really do.
Interesting point from you. That's an interesting point, because we were shocked. We heard 2 years, $3 million a year. Yeah, we thought, well, that's a real low ball. But now hearing from Friedman, like, no, it's the current AAV, in that Marchand wanted 7 or above. It really lines up to what happened with that Lindholm deal. It really lines up. Not only that, but the Swayman thing, which we said he was irritated with in October.
Yes, we did.
Like, we said that look out for this, because he's starting to say things that lead us to believe he's irritated with this contract stuff. And lo and behold, he kind of said, you know what, I'm going to dig my heels in, and said, no, I want this, and you can give me this because I've earned it, which, he probably has. But in the other case, though, is, you have a hockey club to worry about.
Yeah.
And you don't think it's in the best interest of the team to give a 37-year-old with 2 repaired hips and a bad shoulder and this, that, and the other thing, then you move on. And that's what they did. So I don't blame the team at all. But I also don't want to hear this stuff from quote unquote Bruins fans who are all into the Brad Marchand boat and saying that the team is this and the team is that, and then screw these guys and blah blah blah. You can't do this to an icon and blah 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 blah. Well, I disagree because these new points tell me that that's not necessarily the case. Sweeney and Neely went in there to Jacobs and like begged for a third year, and then got the third year.
Yep.
And then Marchand wouldn't come down from like $7 million a year. He wouldn't come down $1 million a year.
By all accounts, they say Marchand went and wanted a face-to-face meeting and was willing to compromise. Now his compromise is what? Coming down from 8 to 7, right? And the Bruins coming from 6 or 6.25 or whatever their his current AAV is, up to 7 and change. I don't, like you said, I don't blame the Bruins for not wanting to go above that for a 37-year-old guy with a history of injuries now. It's not worth it in the long term. It just is
not at this point. Not at this point when your team isn't very good. Like your team is at a crossroads. Like if your team was a nut hair away from winning the cup, I might feel different.
Sure you would.
Yeah.
And it's not. You can't really blame. I can't really blame either side here. Like, the Bruins have to make a decision in the best interest of them, which is not giving a 37-year-old guy, 3 times 7. And Marchand, I can't blame him either, because he's looking at Elias Lindholm and saying, I'm better than him. Why am I going to get paid less? Especially when I've taken discounts in the past and no one else is doing that now. Pastrnak didn't take a discount. McAvoy didn't take a discount. Swayman certainly didn't take a discount. Elias Lindholm got paid well above what he should have been paid. So why? I don't blame him. I don't blame really either side. They both made decisions in their best interest, and you have to walk away. The Bruins need to be paying for future performance, not what he did over the course of 16 years.
No, that's where you get.
That's where it works now. You do. You get in trouble, and I think the Bruins fucked that up. Sorry, John. With the Elias Lindholm thing. You paid him for what he did 4 years ago or 5 years ago in fucking Calgary.
And thought he'd be Patrice Bergeron Jr.
He hasn't done that guy in years.
Right.
So what are you giving him that fucking contract for?
Right.
He's not worth it. He hasn't been worth it. And the contract is going to prove to be a fucking burden. Like, you fucked that up big time. That you could blame the Bruins for that thing, but not for the Marchand thing. You can't.
An interesting point, though, that could have also fucked up the Marchand thing. Is not only is it you fucked it up because you have this albatross of a contract, but now you also couldn't keep your captain because he probably said, "Screw that! I'm not playing for 6."
I'm not taking less than a guy who shouldn't be, who has less points than me. I'm not taking less than that. You just went out and gave this guy this huge contract, and he had 44 points last year. Like, I had 67 points or whatever it was, 69 points, whatever it is. Almost a third more than him. And you want me to play for less money than him? Like, get the fuck out of here. That's what I would have said if I was him.
Yeah, and I'm not blaming Marchand in that regard. No. But I don't want to hear Marchand say, "Boy, I really wanted to stay, and I really wanted to stay, and I really." Yeah. Well, if you really wanted to stay, you'd take what you have now for 3 more years. I mean, if you really wanted to stay, you wouldn't nitpick over $1 million a year.
Yeah, exactly.
So I see both ways on that.
Yeah, certainly.
But yeah, I mean, I think Stamkos got 8 a year. So that's another factor. I mean, guys like sort of in his realm are getting above that number, and I think we kind of hear that people are assuming. I think that it was 7 or so. Maybe it was 8 to start. And
it probably was.
And what he's saying, he probably did start at 8 because Swayman started at 10.
I mean, so Elias Lindholm got 7.75, so I'm sure he started above that.
Yeah,
I'm sure he started above that.
Yeah. So there you go. All right, 7 Chirps is sponsored by Lops Brewing. Lops are a brewing and tasting room in downtown Woonsocket, Rhode Island, specializing in small batch ales and lagers. It's open 7 days a week. You can use the coupon code SPORTS to get 10% off your online order. Go to lopsbrewing.com and follow them at Lops Brewing for new beers and events. Chirp number 1. The sackless goof. Don Sweeney. Does he have a sack after all?
It appears so.
A little bit of one.
A little bit, anyway. Yeah, it
What
appears.
do you think that conversation was with Charlie and Jeremy Jacobs, like in the direction of the team and saying, okay, because the Jacobs are staunchly behind both of those guys, Sweeney and Neely. Like, what do you think that conversation is? Like, okay, we have to retool. We know you love to make the playoffs and so forth. How do you think it gets? Do you think they had to convince them at all? Do you think that something changed because they went from two paths to basically blowing the thing up, which is kind of one extreme to the other?
I don't think they had to convince them. I think the Jacobs, or at least Charlie, he's not here all the time, but I think he watches the games, obviously, and was seeing what everybody else sees, that the team wasn't very good, that they weren't probably going to make the playoffs, and they needed to retool. So they don't like to get rid of front office talent. So I think they thought that those two guys were probably the right guys to make the
right
do the retool. Even though I don't agree with that at all. I think they have confidence that Sweeney and Neely will be able to get this done.
Well, the Jacobs aren't hockey guys. First of all, they're not hockey fans at all.
No.
Like, I mean, they may be a little bit more than they used to be, but not now. Like, they just aren't. So they're kind of going with, that's why they don't make a lot of changes to the front office. Like, they just don't like to do it because I don't even know if they know what they're looking for. Like, just get us to the playoffs. Like, that's about it. So if Sweeney says, this is the way we're going to get you to the playoffs next year. Like, we're going to miss it this year, but we're going to get you there next year by getting rid of these guys, signing a couple of guys in the offseason. We're really close to making the playoffs anyway. We sign a couple more guys. We have a full training camp with Swayman. McAvoy and Lindholm are healthy. Like, the whole thing, they can make the playoffs next year. So that's probably how they sold it.
Sure.
And you know what? I kind of agree. Like, you can make the playoffs next year.
I think so too. I think if you're smart with the moves you make in the offseason, you add some scoring. My pie in the sky guy I want is Mitch Marner. I think he could be drive the second line by himself. Doesn't matter who you put with him. I think he's a good player. If you can get another guy to go there with him, and then have I guess Elias Lindholm center that line. Maybe that turns Elias Lindholm into a little bit more of a point getter if he's more of a shot first guy and doesn't have to drive the line. If he can win the faceoffs, gain possession, Marner can distribute, and you could find another guy on that line to score goals. You might have something there. And then, if you solidify the defense and Swayman's back and healthy and full training camp and that whole thing, you might be right there again.
Sure.
So it's a couple of things, but again, you got to bring in some elite talent, and you're going to have to pay for it. You're not going to be able to get Marner for $12 million. You're going to have to give him more than that. Especially after you miss the playoffs, you're going to have to pay.
You're
going to have to overpay to bring somebody like that in. And will they be willing to do that? I'm not sure. They've seemed to have come close on guys in the past, but they seem to hit a number where they're not willing to go over, and they're going to have to go over the number. They're going to have to get uncomfortable in order to bring some real elite talent in, because it's not, there's other options out there for places to go, teams to go to, where it's warmer weather, whether the tax benefits are better, whatever, the better team on paper, whatever the case may be. There's going to be other options that are going to be better than you next year in the offseason. You're going to have to pay a suck tax, essentially, to bring somebody like that in.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, maybe we can talk Mitchell Marner into existence like we talked Casey Middlestat into existence last year. We had that on the pod, like yay or nay on Casey Middlestat. You were like, yeah, big boy, let's get him.
Yeah.
And a year later, here we are.
Here we are. I mean, we could do this general managing thing. I'm convinced.
GMs.
I'm convinced. Sure. Co-GMs. We'll be like the Cohen brothers in the movies. We'll just there we are, just doing shit, making it happen.
All right, Trip 2. Brad Marchand is traded to the Florida Panthers for a 2027 second rounder that can become a 2028 first rounder if Brad Marchand plays 50% of the playoff games this season. This was kind of a return that was based on his injury, probably a little bit of his age, but more so for his injury. It looked a little shocking that they got this much less than they got like a Brandon Carlo. But I think they were kind of in a bind because he was injured, not sure of his status, still out another 3 to 4 weeks. And you had to let him go because you can't just let him walk at the end of the year, and you don't want it to get messier and all of that. So it was, and also there's a culture change thing. Like, you just want to, if you're gonna do it, you just want to rip the Band-Aid right off and send everybody. So, and that's what they did, and I think that's the right move at the end of the day. May look a little clunky, may feel a little weird, but at the end of the day, I think it helps the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does help the team. And I believe another one of those conditions is the Panthers have to win the first 2 rounds. It's not just playing in playoff games. They actually have to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, I believe.
Right.
So, that's another little caveat there that adds a little something extra to it.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And another reason that I think the return wasn't great is because they basically worked with him. And his agent told teams around the league he only wanted to go to Florida. And the Bruins acquiesced and helped him out. So, as much as, everybody's shitting on the Bruins for, doing Marchand wrong, and Marchand, wanted too much money, like whatever the thing was that got that whole situation fucked up, in the end, they helped the guy out, did him a solid, and sent him to the place where he wanted to go. And the return was less because of that. There was no other teams involved in negotiating. Like, he has a modified no trade or whatever, an 8-team no trade list. So he could kind of say where he wanted to go. And the Bruins worked with him and sent him to Florida, where he wanted to be, and got less of a return because of it. Now, the injury certainly plays a role in that. And maybe it would have been a first and then another pick or something like that if he wasn't hurt. But either way, the return maybe wasn't what you wanted it to be. But, they did the best they could, I think, under the circumstances.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that's it had to happen. And, maybe it's a first rounder in 2028. It's probably still a little bit later in the round. It's a later second rounder. I mean, it's just, it kind of is what it is. But at the end of the day, you can't let him walk.
No.
And it was time. So, and if all those indications about the contract were correct, then I'm with it, because I wasn't giving him 3 years. Like, I don't know what that looks like in 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, I get the people in there, but I'm a Bruins hockey fan.
Yeah.
Like, first, I love Brad. I like Brad Marchand. Great. Did a lot of great things. Really fun to watch. All of that. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not gonna think about Brad Marchand next October. I'm not gonna think one bit about it. I'm gonna think about the team on the fucking ice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Look,
Brad
Marchand was one of my favorite players. I mean, really was. He was one of my favorite players on the Bruins.
Yes, absolutely.
because of the way he played and his compete, and just doing that as a smallish guy. Like, I loved everything about him as a Bruin. But I agree with you. Like, you have to think of the business side of it right now, and you're not paying a 37-year-old guy, giving him a 3-year contract at $7 million per.
No,
it's just not good business. It just isn't.
No, it just isn't.
And you have to look out for the future of the team. And I understand that people are pissed and that Brad Marchand was their favorite guy, and I get all that. But the Bruins actually, for once, did the right thing. Instead of being sentimental about the thing, they did they made the right business move.
They did
at the time, and as much as it hurts, it was the right thing to do.
And they almost were too sentimental. They went to a third year. They walked into Jacob's office, and they were like, "Can you give him 3 years?" And I'm like, "No. If I was outside the door, I would have absolutely nunchucked them both. Like, give me a break, dude. Like, don't do that." But they did. They went in and they begged for it, and they got it. And then he still said no. Okay, then goodbye. Like, goodbye.
Yeah.
Okay. Chirp 3. Charlie Coyle traded. Now, here's a guy we said they should get ahead of, a year ahead of the end of his contract.
Yes.
Now's the time.
Yes.
Send him.
Yes.
He's got some, he hasn't been good, and he's aging, and it's near the end of the line for him, but he has some playoff pedigree. He's a veteran. He's a two-way center. He can be a good third liner on a cup run team. So this was the right time to do it. I'm stunned that they did it, but glad that they did, and they got a really good return for him.
A great return. Like a A+ return.
Yes.
Casey Middlestad is essentially Charlie Coyle without the defensive responsibility. But he's a big kid. He plays center. He has some offensive upside. He can skate better, and he's younger, much younger. And Will Zellers, by all accounts, might be the best prospect they landed in the entire, all 5 trades. He's playing in the USHL. I think he's either first or second in the league in scoring. He has the most goals in the league as an 18-year-old. No other 18-year-old has more than 20 goals. He's leading the league with 37 goals. And he's going to go and play at North Dakota next year, where, that's a really good program to develop, talent. So, that's something to be excited about. And they get a second-round pick out of the thing.
Yeah,
so, I mean, just a slam dunk, I think, for the Bruins. Casey Middlestad has term. It's a little higher than Coyle's. I think 50,000 or whatever it is. 500,000.
Yeah, he's at 575.
Yeah, so 500,000 instead of 525.
Yeah.
So, you're paying a little bit more, but he's a younger guy. The cap's going to go up, so cost controlled, and if he can live up to some of the expectations earlier in his career in Buffalo, he was a pretty good player. Had a 20-plus goal season and a 60-ish point season. So that's Charlie Coyle. That's what he's been. For you, when he was at his best last year, he was a 60-point guy. So if you're getting that, in a guy who's 6-8 years younger than him,
do it.
Then it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it?
Would have been happy with Middlestat in the second rounder, and take Zellers out of it, or the other, or take the pick out, or whatever. I would have been better with. I would have been just as happy with 2/3 of that. So that's a really good return for Charlie Coyle, a guy who's near the end. All right, Chip 4, Brandon Carlo traded. Here's another guy who we said along with Coyle that they should get ahead of. And he had a really good, affordable contract. He's a well-respected defenseman around the league because he's steady, penalty killer. When he's good, he's really good. And he wasn't very good. And it looked like his time was just kind of coming to an end here. It looked like he wasn't getting his game back. A lot of different off-ice stuff with Cassidy and just it seemed to be a temperamental type of guy at times too. And now they trade him for a really good return of Fraser Minton, who's a good prospect for Toronto, and then a first-round pick in 26 and a 2025 fourth rounder. So that's a really good job again by Sweeney with Brandon Carlo. And I'm glad they sort of got ahead of that, because I don't know if I would have extended him beyond next year when his contract was coming up.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a great return. Another A return, I would say. Minton is one of Toronto's top 2 prospects. I believe the Bruins liked Minton better than Easton Cowan, I think was the other one.
Cowan's the other guy. Yeah.
But Cowan was a winger. So the Bruins, of course, want centers. And they said that Minton is a similar guy to Charlie Coyle, but does have the defensive responsibility. So, if you found your second and your third line centers going forward in Minton and Middlestat, you're doing pretty well now. You still need that number 1 guy, because it's not Elias Lindholm. And Matthew Poitras was just sent down to Providence. So it doesn't appear it's going to be Poitras anytime soon either.
No.
We'll talk about that maybe a little later in the show, just as an aside, because it's a little bit ridiculous where the team is at this point in time. But a good return. You get a first for Carlo too. He doesn't give you any offense at all.
Right.
So, and defensively, he's slipped, in the last year and a half. His game isn't getting better. And if you're not getting better, people say you're getting worse. So, to get out from under that contract, even though it was, a pretty good deal, AAV wise, to get a first and a really good prospect and a fourth, I think that's a slam dunk again. Like a really good return for a guy who, has been steady and really good for you, but he's replaceable, I would say.
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, he's a guy you really love to have at that number, contract number, but he's also a guy that's replaceable too. Like it's kind of a tough one. Like when you have him, you really like to have him.
Yeah.
But when you don't, you can replace him. Like it's not like he's this puck mover and 50-point guy from the back end, or a really good winger. Like you can replace that type of guy easier than some other positions. So yes, we like the guy. He did well. He was good when he was good. He was underrated and sort of undervalued when he was good. But at the end of the day, you can replace that type of guy.
Yeah, it's a good penalty killer, all that stuff. But like you said, if he's not going to provide any offense like that, you can find a good defensive defenseman.
You can.
That's going to fill in there. And they actually grabbed a guy who has filled in and is younger and might provide a little more offensively in Jokiharju.
Yeah, Jokiharju is a decent NHL defenseman, and played really well in his first game with them.
Yeah,
and I think he's a projected. I think he's a UFA at the end of the
he
year.
is. Yeah.
And the projections are, like what, $3 million? What is it? $3 million a year, right around Connor Clifton money.
It's 3.1 something or 3.25 somewhere in there.
Yeah, so a little over peak. Like it's good.
Yeah.
That would be a good contract for them. And I would imagine they would sign him to a deal. And if it's right around a little bit more than peak, then that's a good contract. And you actually save $1 million for what Carlo had.
Yeah, save a little bit of money, and he provides a little bit more offensively. You also have to sign Lohrei, as producer Connor chimes in. So that's some money that you save on Carlo. You can spend that money on Lohrei. He's a RFA, so he'll still be under team control, but he'll certainly get a raise. And maybe they'll look to do something long term. I don't know. Or maybe some kind of a bridge deal to improve it more on the defensive end. Clearly the offense is there, but he needs to improve defensively. But maybe that's something that they can figure out here in the in the offseason.
Connor seems to think that Jokiharju walks. So let's see what happens there.
Interesting.
So we'll see. Chirp number 5. The first trade they made was a more predictable trade, the one that we thought that they probably have to make, and that was Trent Frederic. A lot of talk in the last couple of months about him not re-signing, not having a very good year at all, especially offensively. Talk about him maybe want to go back to his hometown, being an asset around the league that we felt was more of an asset than we thought he was. So go ahead and try to make a trade. So they trade Trent Frederic and Max Jones to Edmonton, and they get a pretty good return from Freddie and Jones. And Jones was a guy that we hardly knew. He was brought in, speed, size, thought, maybe he could catch lightning in a ball, be a fourth liner, barely made the team. And then when he made the team and played on the roster, he was taking all sorts of offensive zone penalties and doing dumb shit and not doing much of anything, and spent most of his time in the AHL. So Frederic moves, and it's the right move. I didn't want to extend Frederic, especially if he's asking $5 million a year, which is just ungodly.
It's outrageous
from what he provides. You talk about overrated Bruins players in history. He's got to be up there in like the top 10.
Yeah, I think so. I think he is, because people talk about the tough to play against thing, but the fighting after the first year or so wasn't there. And he did start to produce offensively, but when he was playing with good players, so he wasn't playing with the Taylor Halls of the world now and the Nick Folignos of the world now. So his production dips. There was a month there where he was zeros across the board, where he was invisible. You hardly ever heard his name called. And so that's not an impact player. That's not a $5 million a year player to me. I'm glad they got out from under that. I'm glad they got a good return back. The prospect from Edmonton is, one of their top 10 prospects. Whether he'll be anything in the NHL, who knows? But it's a big defenseman, a little bit physical, doesn't provide much offense. Sounds a little bit like Brandon Carlo, because I think he can skate a little bit. So maybe that guy's a Brandon Carlo replacement down the line. But either way, you get out from underneath Freddie. You don't have to pay him, and now you can go out and spend the money in free agency or do whatever you need to bring in some scoring, because he certainly wasn't giving it to you this year.
For sure. Chirp 6, Justin Brazeau. a guy that I would have been clamoring for them to trade. Didn't think they'd get it any for. And lo and behold, another decent return for a guy who, let's face it, is not an everyday NHL player. So they trade Justin Brazeau for Jacob Lauko, old friend. Jacob Lauko comes back. And also Marat Husnadinov comes in, a shifty little, crafty little Russian forward from the Minnesota Wild and a 6th-round pick. So, Jesus, they get 2 players and a 6th-round pick. Now, Lauko is what he is, and we know what that is. And a 6th-round pick probably won't amount to anything. But Kustadinov is actually a guy that you take a flyer on.
Absolutely.
He's not, he's a shifty, crafty, and he played his first game and he showed some flashes of that. He hasn't been a high point producer in the KHL or MHL. Like he hasn't scored a ton of goals or put up a ton of points per game, and has not played in the AHL yet. But we'll see what he can do with Providence. He is on the roster for any type of playoff run for them, and we'll see how long he gets to look here with Boston. But again, you got something for essentially a nothing burger in Brazeau.
Yeah, he's 22 years old, so there's still room, I think, for his game to grow some. And like you said, he's crafty, he's skilled. You know, he has some speed, which Brazeau didn't have. So I like the upside there to take a flyer on a guy that you know essentially bring into your organization for nothing in Justin Brazeau, who wasn't going to be a part of your future. You get Lauko back. Lauko is a better 4th-line player, in my opinion, right now than Brazeau is. He's faster. He'll hit. He'll drop the gloves. You know, he'll stir things up, and he'll occasionally score a goal. I think he has 3 or 4 goals. Like, you know, it's fine. It's fine for a 4th-line player. Justin Brazeau, yesterday or the day before in Minnesota's game, played 4 minutes and 10 seconds, had zeros across the board, had 2 shifts in the second period and 0 shifts in the third period.
Yeah. That's kind of what he had become here.
Yeah. He was getting scratched here, and in Minnesota, they're probably going to scratch him soon.
Yeah. They have a talented team.
You got 2 players back and a pick for a guy who's essentially an extra forward. Yeah. So again, it's a win of a trade by our buddy Sweens.
No doubt about it. And Trip 7 was the deadline a success?
A huge success. Huge.
I think so too. I think it was altering. I think it was the type of deadline that they really needed for this kind of retool, as we talk about. And I'm telling you, I don't think they're going to be cup contenders next year, but I'm telling you that this team, if they do the right things and are able to do so, they're going to make the playoffs next year.
Yeah, I'm going to say it right now. Next year they make the playoffs.
Yes, I think they will, and they'll make the playoffs. And then, of course, whatever happens. But I really believe that's the case. And you already saw in the first game the increased speed and agility of the roster. They're not. Obviously not talented enough, but you could just see the difference in how they played. Like there were guys out there like Frederic, Coyle, Marchand, all gone. Like in Brazeau, all gone. And you replace them with guys who can really skate and forecheck and make it. That first 3 minutes of that game was all Boston, like all Boston on every puck, like stole every puck. Like it was just constantly in the zone, or if it came out, it went right back in, and it was completely tilting the ice in the very part of the first part of that game. So you've already seen kind of the benefit of that. Now, the biggest question for me is, what team are they going to be? Like, have they decided that? Are they going to still try to be big and physical and heavy and all that stuff? Or are they going to try to change the way they play? And who's the coach of that? And are they dictating first what their identity is and then getting the coach? Or are they getting the coach and saying, what's your identity, how you want to play?
Yeah, I think Sweeney and Neely will set the identity of the team.
They will.
And they'll
I don't know if I love that.
No, I don't. Well, like they know. They don't know, but they should know what type of player a Bruins player is.
Yeah, what is that?
And I'm not sure that they know that because it was big and physical, and Freddie was like the prototypical Bruins player. Like looking back, like you would say, Trent Frederic. That's the guy. He'll fight. He's big. He'll hit. He can score a little bit. But I really think that it should be not necessarily Jakub Lauko, because I mean, he's a fourth line guy, and that's what he is. But
that type of guy,
that type of guy that will scrappy, will compete, can skate, will hit, will fight, will drop the give me a guy. I don't care how big he is, but give me a guy that it's going to be scrappy and will compete. Give me a team full of guys that are scrappy and will compete, and I'll see how we do. If we're not that talented, the least we can do is bother you and turn pucks over and get to the net and bang and rebound. Just give me that. Give me a scrappy competing team that's going to be relentless. That's what my identity. If I were to describe what I want them to be relentless. I don't want them to sit back and wait for teams to come at them. I want them to dictate the tempo. I want them to be aggressive on the forecheck. I want them to wear down the other team's defense. That's what I want. So that's how I would build the team if it were me. But then to go along with that, you still need skill. So David Pastrnak doesn't have to be that. If Mitch Marner comes, he doesn't have to be that. But I want the rest of the guys that surround those guys, that surround the talent, to play that way, to be that way. So when you force a turnover and you pass the puck to someone, it's Pastrnak or Marner, and they can score goals.
Right. So you want you want Kenny Linsman, Randy Burridge, Robbie DeMaio, that type of guy.
Well, maybe not DeMaio, but
in your face, scrappy.
Yes. I want Brad. I said it on the post. I would take 21 Brad Marchands. Not right now, Brad Marchands.
Right.
But
back in the day. Sure.
Back in the day, give me 21 Brad Marchands. I think we'll do okay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think we do fine.
DraftKings Sportsbook is Boston's hometown sportsbook. It's live right here in Massachusetts. Bet local on all your favorite sports from the comfort of your own home with DraftKings. To celebrate, all new customers will receive up to $150 in bonus bets when you sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook using code ITR. You can now bet local on money lines, spreads, props, and more with one of America's top-rated sportsbooks. That's DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Sign up with the code ITR to get up to $150 in bonus bets to use now that mobile sports betting is live in Massachusetts. That's code ITR only at DraftKings Sportsbook.
If your loved one is experiencing problems with gambling, call 800-327-5050 or visit helplinema.org to speak with a trained specialist free and confidentially 24/7. Must be 21 plus, physically present in Mass. Eligibility restrictions apply, subject to regulatory licensing requirements. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as free bets. Terms at DraftKings.com/MA.
All right. Beauty for this week. I'll tell you, it's been a guy who's just gradually getting better and better by the day the last couple of years, and that's Morgan Geekie.
This'll teach those filthy bastards who's lovable.
I'll tell you what, he's been so lovable since the first of the year that he's one of the top scoring goal scorers. He's one of the top point getters in the league. And I'll tell you, the last 3 weeks, I would say, really sealed the deal with them keeping him. I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, they were probably targeting seeing what they could get for him. And now I think he just played so well and showed such great chemistry with Pastrnak that now they're like, you know what? We're going to work to sign him as an RFA at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a good move to sign him. He's still only 25.
Right.
And with you, with more opportunity, his goals have gone up each year. 17 and then 22 now. So, and like you said, good chemistry with Pastrnak. So I think an extension there is the right way to go. You do need goal scoring. You need secondary scoring, or, in this case with him on this team, primary scoring. So, that's the right move. That's the right thing to do with Morgan Geekie for sure.
I am with you.
And the bender is Bruins owner Charlie Jacobs.
It's not an X-ray, so.
Oh no,
Not a bender.
Not an Asper either. No.
Look, I don't love the vote of confidence that he gave Sweeney and Neely. I think Sweeney and Neely need to go. As much as I enjoyed this little franchise altering trade deadline and culture shift and, getting a new, maybe some new leadership in the room. There needs to be new leadership in the front office because I'm not sure I want these guys going through the rebuild. I don't love their drafting history. The trades have been fine, but I just don't want these guys in charge of it. I think they had their chance and couldn't really get over the hump. So
I think they should have made some of the moves they made all in one fell swoop. I think they should have gradually made those moves over time to try to retool on the fly and make those savvy hockey trades that you have to make to try to continue to be competitive. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy.
No.
But I think they should have been more willing and more aggressive to do those things to try to remain like Carolina has done. Like we mentioned that Mikko Rantanen, that didn't work, but at least they tried to make that type of hockey trade to stay relevant, to stay cup contenders, to avoid contract disputes and to avoid guys walking and, avoid guys getting, a little bit too much tread on the tires and not enough tread on the tires to, so that the value is now lesser than it was. So I think they could have gotten ahead of some of these things. Jimmy Murphy thinks they should have traded Marchand last year.
Yeah.
And maybe they should have now thinking back at it. But back then you're like, there's no way they're trading Marchand. He's going to retire a Bruin. And now here we are a year later and they got a second round pick for him.
And look, I'll even go as far as to say with Carolina, like they may have messed up that Rantanen thing, not knowing whether or not he was going to sign there. But they realized their mistake almost immediately. And then we're willing to trade the guy out to recoup some of those assets back. Like, if that was the Bruins and they sign, say, Elias Lindholm to a contract that you're like, oh wow, that was a mistake. He's not the player we thought he was. Like Carolina, somebody else is moving him out already. Like they're looking to get out from under that thing, and like we fucked that up. We gotta fix it. We gotta fix it right away. And you probably wouldn't be able to find a suitor because, Elias Lindholm is certainly not Mikko Rantanen. But, you have to recognize when you make mistakes or when you do things that don't work out, and you have to work to correct those right away. Like the longer you hold on to those things, the more of a burden they become. So you have to be willing to get out from under that thing if you realize you made a mistake early on, and that's another thing that I don't think Neely and Sweeney do very well is recognize they've made a mistake and move on from it quickly. Like that's just not their MO. They're not quick decision makers really at all.
No, very methodical.
And not very creative when it comes to either taking on other people's money. It's never the Bruins involved in a trade as the third team where they can, use salary retention to get a prospect or an extra draft pick. Like that's not them ever. It's always somebody else helping. And the Bruins are, one of the main parties involved. So, that's another area where they could improve in. And they just haven't done a great job over the course of their time here in maximizing their assets. And
they haven't.
So the Bruins now are paying the price for it, and hopefully with some of these moves at the deadline, they've starting to to recoup some of that stuff.
All right, week ahead, and the Bruins are 3 points behind the second wild card spot, so they're still technically in it. In this stretch right here, if they can get 6 out of 8 points or so right here, then we might have some meaningful hockey in the beginning of April, to be honest with you. So March 11th versus Florida without Marchand. March, and also Tkachuk. Matt Tkachuk is out too with injury. March 13 at Ottawa, who's in one of those playoff spots. And then March 15th, a rematch with Tampa at home, which will be real telling because Tampa was sleepy the first time. We'll see what happens in Boston. And then a reeling Buffalo team again, lost 6 in a row. March the 17th on St. Patty's Day in Boston. So that's your next 4. And again, you beat Florida at home, then you go into Ottawa, like you're still within distance and they're just ahead of you. Like I know it's probably
a big game. It could be a real big game.
it's unlikely, but Jesus, you could stay in this till the very end. You really could stay in this to the bitter end.
Yeah, I mean, look, crazier things have happened. And I'd like to see them play meaningful hockey. I mean, we've said it all along, like as much as, we'd like to see them tank and get a high draft pick and maybe get one of those, 3-4 guys that are at the top of the draft. They're not going to get up that high.
They're not getting
at best they'd be, in the 7 to 10 range probably. And with a very slim chance of winning the lottery. So I'd rather see them, now that they've blown the thing up, like have these guys play hard and see if you can sneak in and cause somebody some fucking problems. Yeah. Florida did that to you as an 8 seed when you were the one. Like, I'm not saying you're talented enough to beat Florida, but
you're kind of dumb enough to win that series.
Yeah, maybe you are.
Like a couple games.
Swayman played real well in the series last year, so maybe you get a hot goalie and you're stupid enough to win some games, and maybe the other team overlooks you a little bit. I don't know, but get in there. I'd rather see that than, have 6 months of an off season. So
and I'll tell you what, you do that, and it gives you even more momentum going into the off season. Like you are a playoff team, and now you're certainly a playoff caliber team looking forward to next year. So it can really quicken the retool for sure if you just finish this really strong.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that would help with free agents.
Sure. Yeah, look, we've retooled and look at what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a free agent and the Bruins, retool, trade all those guys and then go get hot towards the end of the season, what a free agent's going to remember? Oh, that team traded all those guys. They turned things around quickly. They made a run. They got into the playoffs. Like if you somehow get into the playoffs, that's more attractive to a free agent than a team that's at the bottom of the league. Mm-hmm. So
and it further makes me believe that David Pastrnak should be a Hart Trophy candidate.
Absolutely.
They have to make the playoffs because that says a lot about him if they make the playoffs after all this.
Sure.
It does. A lot more than people want to give him credit for.
I think I might be changing up my my opinion on maybe who should wear the C. I think I know. I really do.
It might be him.
I think it should be him.
He's really grown a lot, matured a lot this year. Like in the last couple of years, we're already taxing on him because he's been everything to this team.
Right.
And I think it's really helped mature him. And now he's 28, whatever he is years old. Like he's been in the league a while now. Like it's
he has.
It's been in the league a while.
I thought he handled the Marchand thing well too.
He did.
Like I think he's usually one of the guys that's willing to talk. So he's their best player. There's other teams where the captain is the best player. Like I don't have a problem with it. I don't think the way that he carried himself. This year, I think it should be him. I do.
Yeah, I don't have a problem if it's warranted. And I'll tell you what, McAvoy and Zadorov would be my other two.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think they'd be my other two. Although maybe, I guess maybe Hampus, but I'd lean Zadorov. Yeah.
I think you could go Zadorov because I think he's the one guy out of that group that will fight people that other people would be afraid of.
Yes. And I think that's true. And I think Zadorov's shown and said some things this year that kind of might warrant it too.
I agree. I agree.
All right. Please head over to our merch shop and grab some Bruins Benders merchandise. Subscribe to the Inside the Rink YouTube channel. Catch us on the post games after every game, right through to the end of the season, right through to the very bitter end. And we're back at it. It was a Tuesday night after the Florida Panthers game. Get into our comments section. It's a lot of fun in there. Give us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts as well. And follow us on Spotify and other platforms. We do a weekly episode. We'll be back at it the following Wednesday. Until next week's episode, go Bruins.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.